the Portsmouth Trades Council and Portsmouth City Unison, and we organised a lunchtime meeting here in the civic offices where some of us work. It was a really interesting meeting, and one thing we found is that when we're here together, we feel strong. When we're in our workplaces, we don't feel quite so strong. And sometimes there's a feeling of isolation and a feeling that we can't talk about the horror that's going on in Gaza. But we have to talk about the horror that's going on in Gaza with our work colleagues, with our student colleagues, with our family and our friends and our neighbours. And it's really, really important if we're going to build a movement which is going to break the UK government from support for Israel. One of the things we've been doing in the civic offices is we started putting flags, Palestinian flags, on our computers so that we can show that we're really where we stand. And I've got a few here. If people have got somewhere where they can put them at work to make it clear where they stand, they're very welcome to take them. We're trying to encourage more and more people to do so, because the council here, people may not know, just before Christmas passed a motion calling for an immediate ceasefire, and they've written to the Foreign Secretary making that clear. An amendment was passed to that motion which I think I just wait for the bongs. The motion was amended by Cal Corkery, one of the independent good councillors, to also that we Portsmouth should twin with a Palestinian city. Portsmouth's already twinned with Haifa, an Israeli city. We want to twin with a Palestinian city in solidarity. So we're going to be putting pressure on the council. So there's never been a more important time that we organise. I think we're in a situation where we're probably going to wrap this up. And I know it's been a really moving event, I think, a really powerful event. But I do think we ought to just come together and say a few chants for Palestine. Is that good? Yeah. Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
Let's keep up the struggle, everybody. Well done. I think it's been an amazing event, and we're going to keep on protesting and demonstrating until we get justice and freedom for Palestine.
To quickly add something. So the Zionists really want to frame the pro-Palestinian cause as a negative thing, as a hateful thing. And I just wanted to remind all of us here as a responsibility not only to speak up for Palestine, but to make sure we are representing the cause in a right way, in a peaceful way, in a kind way. Do not rise up to Zionist propaganda. Do not respond with hateful messages. Do not respond with deep anger. Just ignore them. You're not going to change the mind of Zionists, okay? The people whose minds we should be focusing on are the people who do not understand the conflict, the people on the fence. We need to explain what's going on in Gaza. The people who are on the side of Israel and know what's going on there, who have seen the genocide and still decide to side with Israel, they are lost causes. Their hearts are rocks. They do not have pure souls. We cannot do anything with them. We are wasting our time arguing with them when all it's going to do is frame us as negative, is frame us as hateful, frame us as argumentative. We need to focus on elevating Palestinian voices, for speaking up what the Palestine cause is about, for representing all of these people who have died and all the many more who have died. We cannot give in to hatred. We cannot give in to Zionist propaganda. Please, please do not rise to hate. Do not respond to hate. Just let it slide by. Ignore them, block them. If it happens in real life, like just now when I was reading my poem, don't respond to them. Just keep on speaking up for Gaza, speak up for Palestine, and make sure as well that if you see other people who are supposedly on the pro-Palestinian cause but are very clearly using it as an excuse to be anti-Semitic, that we call them out too. Because anti-Semitism has no place in the pro-Palestine movement. Jews are not the problem. Jews are a protected community. They do not deserve any of the hatred they are getting. And I am seeing disgusting anti-Semitism online from people who very clearly do not care about Palestine and simply want an excuse to spread their anti-Semitic lies. We do not have an issue with Jews. Jews are good people just like anyone else on the planet. Our issue is with Israel, is with Zionism, is with genocide, and we need to be very clear about our message, and we need to make sure that we are calling out other people who are alongside our ranks if they are falling into these traps, if they are falling into anti-Semitism. We cannot just ignore it, okay? We ignore the Zionist propaganda. We do not ignore the anti-Semitism, because that will detract from the cause and that will hurt other innocent people, because the Jews are just as innocent as the people in Gaza. They do not deserve the hate any more than the people in Gaza deserve to be bombed, and we need to make sure that we are speaking up for the people of Palestine and we're not speaking down of the Jewish community, because Jews are not the issue. Zionism is. Free Palestine.
Malika.
I'm going to be reading a poet written by Rafat El-Hariri. He was murdered by Israel. I remember when it happened because I followed him on Twitter, and he used to share such beautiful words. He truly had a gift for words. And I'm going to share a poem that he wrote before he died, well, before he was murdered. If I must die, you must live. To tell my story, to sell my things. Seize the kite, my kite you made flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale. And those were the words shared by Rafat before he died. Even when he knew his death was coming, he wanted his death to be a beacon of light, a beacon of hope to the children in Palestine. And we must make sure that his legacy is one of light, is one of hope, that we use his words, we use his name as a beacon for peace and love and tranquility in the region, and for a free Palestine. Rafat is just one man that was killed, and his words are truly beautiful. So he did die, so we must live, and we must tell his story.
Thank you so much, Malika, and thank you to everybody that's come and stood with us today and been part of this vigil and protest for the people of Gaza. Thank you for everybody who's come and remembered the names of some of the people who've been murdered and are no longer with us. We know we have to continue this. We will continue. In Portsmouth, we've been organising regular events, and we will continue to do that. We want more and more people to be involved in it. You know, we know there are still people who have no understanding of what's happening, either through hate and racism or because they're just completely misguided by the things that they're being told. So we have to keep speaking out. We have to keep discussing, arguing, explaining, making sure that people understand the reality of what's happening, because this is a genocide happening right in front of our faces. And we know that we can't just allow that to happen. So I don't think we've actually got plans organised for Saturday, but I hope that people will be thinking this weekend that we can take some action. There's lots of boycott targets in Portsmouth that we need to be going and raising and making clear the link between Barclays and to the genocide, the link between Costa Coffee and the genocide, how McDonald's is supporting the genocide. So if you're not already on the WhatsApp or on the contact list for Palestine Solidarity Campaign, come and grab me in a minute and we'll get you on there, and we'll plan that. And then a week on Saturday the 17th of December, there will be another national demonstration in London. And the demonstrations for Gaza have been absolutely huge and have continued since October and will continue until there's a permanent ceasefire and we start on the road towards reconstruction, peace and justice for Palestinians. So I don't know if anybody else wanted to say any words. Oh, yeah, let me hand over.
Hi. This is Muhammad Ali. He was a Palestinian journalist with Al Shabaab Radio, and he was killed in an Israeli bombardment of his home. So he's at home. I look at him, and I've been looking at him all the time I've been listening and thinking, you want me to say your name? You want me to say your name. So I'm saying his name, Muhammad Ali, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking of my two boys, who are probably somewhere around about his age, with their lives ahead of them, and he doesn't have his life ahead of him anymore. He's somebody's son, he could be somebody's father, somebody's brother, but he's not there anymore. And this has to stop. This is the most heartbreaking thing that has happened to our generation. How many of us just look and see what's happening and we weep, and we know that it is because people have had drummed into them for years that these people are people to be feared and hated, and they're not. They've had it drummed into them that these are their enemies, and they never should have been. This is a war of hatred fueled by extreme wickedness, and we're complicit in it if we do nothing. And people will say, well, what are you standing here for? Because we just have to be heard. And the more we say something, the more chance we have of somebody somewhere in our government listening. This has to stop. And Mohammed, I'm so sorry you're not here anymore, but you told me to say your name and I've said it. Mohammed, be remembered here.
And I'm scared for them. Right now, I can write to you. From 1 second to the next, I might very well no longer be in this world. Remember my name and those of all the victims of my city. Engrave our images in your memories, because we will not forgive the world. She was killed together by members of her family by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. She was a medical student. I wonder, over the course of their career, how many people a doctor might save, and how many people might now die because she has been killed. I want everyone to remember that for each one of these faces you see that has died, there are tens, hundreds, maybe thousands of people who will suffer because of that, who are deeply affected by their death. This is Ghassan Halassa. She was 19 years old when she died. I'm going to read you a short quote by her.
This beautiful young woman in July, long before October the 7th happened, was celebrating being awarded the best high school student in Palestine. She was killed, along with other members of her family, by an Israeli airstrike on the refugee camp in which she lived. Just think about that. Before this conflict, war, whatever you want to call it, happened, these people were already refugees living in Gaza, described as one of the biggest refugee camps in the world. Just think about the future she might have had. Talk has been made of the fact that these photographs are a tiny proportion of the number of thousands of people that have died in the last few months. 11,500 of those victims were children. And if, like me, you can't get your head round that number or envisage it, then let me tell you that recently in Bournemouth, an organisation called Led by Donkeys have found 11,500 children's outfits and laid them out side by side in a line on the beach that stretched for 5 kilometres. That brings the reality of the cost of this conflict home. Led by Donkeys. Google it, find the video and share it. Let's make sure that everybody knows what is happening, that they might be inspired to do something to help to make it stop.
I actually don't have a picture because the woman I want to speak about died only today, 7 hours ago. Her name is Rasmi Muhammad Abu Salah, and she died not because of bullets or bombs, because these are not the only things that are killing Palestinians in Gaza today. She died because of oxygen shortage. She was in a hospital, in Al Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis, that has been under siege for 17 days today. She was 77, so also like many people who have been murdered and you heard about, is older than the State of Islam.
Thank you. Does anybody else?
Faces of Viola and Yara Amash. We've just heard that this isn't about what Israel are telling us it's about, and the West isn't telling us about Well, they want us to think it's about a clash between Islam and Judaism. It's not. Viola and Yara, they were bombed in the church in Gaza City. They were Palestinian Christian, 2 young women with their life ahead of them. So it's important to remember them as well, because they are evidence. This is not a religious war. It's not a religious war. Israel wants us to think it is, but our media is complicit in that. They often make it out that it's a religious war. It is not a religious war. It's about many other things. So remember their name, Viola and Yara Amash. They have names, they have faces.
He was a 22-year-old independent photojournalist. He was shot by an Israeli sniper at the Erez checkpoint in the West Bank. This should tell us that this violence is not just happening in Gaza. We're seeing massive repression in the West Bank, in Jenin, in Nablus, in Bethlehem, in Hebron, all over the West Bank, all over Gaza. Repression is increasing. People are dying. They're not dying. They're not dying for some odd reason. They're being murdered for the crime of being Palestinian.
I would just like to remind you all of the role that Rishi Sunak, not only as the Prime Minister, but as an individual, has in the genocide of people in Gaza. His stepfather, owns shares in Infinis, an computer science company which is sending information to Israel. There is a conflict of interest in this war, not only on a nationwide level, but on an individual basis. Joe Biden once said, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, Joe Biden once said that if there wasn't an Israel, we'd have to create one because of our economic interests in the region. This isn't just about the liberation, this isn't just about Israel, this isn't just about safeguarding people, it's about money, it's about power, and it's about oil. And this is what people don't want you to know. Bear this in mind.
This is Omar, just a little baby who was killed with 10 members of his family. Sorry, I've never done this before. Killed with 10 members of his family in their home in Gaza. Just a little baby who doesn't get to make the memories that we get to make. First kiss, first day at school. It's absolutely wrong. It's not right, and it's not fair what's going on. We're just a baby.
This is Said Al-Tawil. He was the editor-in-chief of Al-Kamasa news website, killed by another one of Israel's airstrikes of the Haji Tower in Gaza City. We've talked about how important journalists are to us knowing all of the crimes that the Israeli state has committed. We must remember every single one who has sacrificed their life in the name of truth.
The tip of the iceberg. So if we have a minute's silence to remember all the people who've been killed and maimed.
He was a 36-year-old Palestinian writer and poet. Writer and poet. Couldn't be anything more peaceful. He's obviously a musician as well. We can see in the picture here that he's a musician. Portsmouth is a really great city for music, lots of musicians here. Imagine if one of those, 36 years old, he was involved in gymnastics on the beach when he was murdered by the Israelis. So a musician on the beach doing gymnastics could be here in Southsea, could be here in Portsmouth, and he was murdered. Remember him, he has a face, he has a name.
Thank you, Chris.
This is Dua Sharaf, a Palestinian journalist with Al Aqsa Radio, killed with her daughter in an Israeli airstrike. targeting a home in Al Zawiya, Gaza. Another victim of genocide and war crimes by a government riddled with criminals and war criminals. Netanyahu is an utter scumbag. He's a criminal, let alone his genocide. They should be removed. Awful. We shouldn't be here on these wet and damp evenings. We need a ceasefire right now, and our British government is a disgrace. I'm absolutely ashamed to be British when I hear what Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer are doing. Absolute disgrace.
This is Medhat Saddam. He was a surgeon at Shifa Hospital, and he was killed by an Israeli attack with 30 members of his family in the house where they were being sheltering in Gaza. And it really brings it home that the absolutely decimation and smashing to bits of health and welfare in Gaza at the moment. And this is a solemn moment, and I think maybe we should have a minute's silence in any case now on the 5:30 for all the people who have died. But before I do that, I just want to say one thing about the British government's decision to cancel support for UNRWA, the Palestinian United Nations refugee organisation. People remember the International Court of Justice's ruling, which was damning against Israel and calling them to take action to prevent genocide happening in Gaza. Well, people may remember that the very next day, the Israeli government put an allegation that 13 refugee workers for the United Nations refugee organisation were involved in the Hamas attack. To date, and people maybe want to look at the Channel 4 news about this, they did an investigation about this, that not one single shred of evidence has been produced to back up that claim. UNRWA, because they were under so much pressure, sacked all 13 workers, and 9 governments, including the UK, immediately stopped all funding of UNRWA. That means that they will run out of money by the end of this month. They're already in desperate situation. People starving, people with disease, with no shelter, in appalling conditions, similar to this or probably worse, with appalling rain. They've had 2 days of solid rain in Gaza, and yet our government not only is arming and providing military support for Israel, they are also cutting off humanitarian aid. This government in the UK is absolutely guilty and complicit with genocide, and no wonder we are out on the streets, and we'll keep on protesting and marking all these deaths. So I think it's really good to see people here. I would suggest that maybe now is a good time to do a minute's silence, and we can think of, I think the latest official figures is something like 28,000 dead. We know many.
5 years old, and he was killed by an Israeli bombardment in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. Look at that face. Look at that smile. Look at that innocent thumbs up. I put a thumbs up in my pictures when I don't really know what to do with my hands, and it's sweet seeing this little child doing the same pose that I would do, that many of us would do in a photo. The thumbs up meaning happiness, positivity, and yet he can no longer spread that happiness and positivity. And he was only 5 years old. 5 years of age. We wouldn't even let our own 5-year-old children watch the news of what's happening in Gaza, and yet they are living it. People 5 years old and younger, babies even. Look at this sweet boy, look at his smile, remember his face. This is who we are fighting to save. This is who we are standing up for. When we do these protests, when we speak up for Palestine, it is to save people like Iyad, all the thousands who are living in his situation, all the other 5-year-old boys in Palestine who could be snuffed out at any moment by an airstrike or by a sniper or by famine or by pollution, or terrible atrocities that are happening in Gaza at this moment, aided by our own government who refuse to condemn Israel's atrocities. We need to speak up for the Palestinians to stop more and more of these faces being printed out and their names read out. And it's wonderful that we're here reading their names out, but we shouldn't have to be. We shouldn't be here living his legacy for him. He should be living his own legacy at 5 years old. He should be deciding what he wants to be. He should be considering all the possible dreams for his future, but he no longer has a future because at 5 years of age, he was murdered. He was murdered like all of these other people, like all the other tens of thousands of faces. We need to speak up. We need to continue showing up to stop sweet little kids like this from dying. It's devastating to see all these faces. And these are not just faces on paper. These were living, breathing human beings with stories and dreams who should have had futures. We shouldn't be here holding a candlelight vigil for these victims. They should be living their lives. They should be breathing and smiling and laughing and doing cheesy grins with thumbs up in these pictures like any other child anywhere in the world deserves the right to do. We should not have to be mourning a 5-year-old boy who has committed no crime except to be Palestinian. It is not a crime to be Palestinian. It is not a crime to live in Gaza. We need to speak up. We need to save the rest of the people in Gaza to make sure that Iyad is not just another number that gets forgotten. It's just devastating.
This is Salma Makaima. She was a Palestinian freelance journalist killed alongside her young child in an Israeli airstrike at Rafah, a border crossing on the Egyptian border in southern Gaza. All Palestinians now are either living in territory which is subject to daily airstrikes or are trapped into a small, supposedly safe area approximately the size of Heathrow Airport. This is no way for anyone to live. This is no way for Palestinians to live. Freedom for Palestine.
This is Yumna Shakliha. She was a 5-month-old baby girl delivered via difficult cesarean section, and she was killed after she fled with her mother and her family following the Israeli order to move in southern Gaza. 5 months old. She didn't even get to live a full year before she was dead before she even had a chance to live, really. At 5 months old, she probably wouldn't have spoken her first words, wouldn't have had her first steps. Her mother and father would have been so proud of her when she was born, and yet at 5 months old, she was murdered. She was following the orders to evacuate. She was doing, well, her parents were doing what she was told to do. She was a baby. She was a baby killed for no reason. For no reason. They are murdering people for no reason. This baby did not deserve to die. None of these people deserved to die. We keep being told that the Israeli government and the Israeli forces are being so moral, so kind by letting them know to evacuate, and yet she was evacuating. This baby was evacuating. She was doing what she was told. The idea of safe zones in Gaza is a complete lie. There is not a single strip of land in Gaza that is safe, and these faces are proof of that. These are tests to the war crimes that Israel are committing. You cannot be safe in Gaza. You just wait your turn to be murdered. You wake up every day and pray that it's not your house that has a bomb dropped on it. It's not your family member who is slaughtered in their sleep. It is not your child whose limbs have to be amputated with no anesthetic because medical aid and all other kinds of aid are being blockaded from going into the country. Look at this picture. Look at this baby girl. This baby girl, 5 months old, who was murdered. Look at her. Look at her and remember her face, and remember that she is just one of the many, many children killed in Gaza who did not even reach their first birthday. And she was delivered via a difficult cesarean section. There was so much struggle to bring her into this world, so much effort to make her life count for something, and it was stolen. It was stolen in a single moment. She did not deserve to die. No baby anywhere in the world deserves to die, and this is why we are protesting, to try and save all these innocent babies, all these innocent children, all these innocent men, all these innocent women, all these innocent people who should have lived, and all the innocent people who are living right now and could die at any moment if we don't do something. If our government doesn't do something, if the world doesn't do something, we need to speak up to ensure that no more innocent people die. We are full of love, not hate. We are full of love for the victims, for the people who are suffering. We need to speak up. We need to remember their names. We need to remember their faces, and we need to remember they are not just numbers. Every single one of the nearly 30,000 confirmed dead had a face, had a name, had a story. We need to make sure that no more stories end up being untold. No more unfinished stories in Gaza, no more unfinished stories anywhere else in the world. We need to speak up for justice. We need to speak up for these innocent people, and we need to speak up for little girls like Yumna, who should have had a chance to live. And all the little girls like Yumna still in Palestine, who I hope one day get to see a free Palestine and get to grow up in a free Palestine, away from oppression, away from apartheid, away from fear. I just want them to be able to have the same chance at life as any other child in the world deserves to have. Yumna doesn't get that chance. Let's speak up for the little girls who still have it.
In our history, very. We are wounded. But it's also a very hopeful moment in our history. Very hopeful. Because of what we see in terms of heroism, our doctors, our teachers, our journalists, our mothers. This is unprecedented in terms of our ability to withstand this and to convey the message. And we have seen this wave of international solidarity. We have seen the streets of London and everywhere. We believe the tide is turning. We believe it is the moment for the truth and the moment for justice, and you are part of all that. Thank you.
Proof of the evidence. Shame. I am sick of being lied to. Somebody mentioned Radio 4's Today programme. I've just switched it off. I've stopped listening now because it's a joke. They are not asking the right questions. They are not holding truth to power. They just let Zionist after Zionist come on and give us a load of BS.
Up to save the futures of those who still have them. It's our duty as human beings.
This is Heba Zaghut, 39 years old, Palestinian painter, teacher, and a mother. She was killed with 2 of her children when Israel bombarded the safe refugee campus they were sheltering in southern Gaza. She said, "Art is the message I transmit to the outside world to express the feelings and emotions and tensions that Gaza experiences." We lost Heba and we lost an artist.
This is Mahmoud Al-Naouk. He was 25 years old and an author and translator, and he was an active member of the Gaza collective We Are Not Numbers. And he was killed by an Israeli missile strike on his family home in central Gaza. I work as a writer myself, and he's there as an author doing his writing, putting his words into the world, and having his life cruelly stolen. And I actually recognise the surname Al-Naouk because there's a man, Ahmed Al-Naouk, and he lives in Bath in the southwest, and his entire family in Gaza were killed. Over 20 members of his family. He had nieces, nephews, his sisters, brothers, parents, so many snuffed out by a single strike. And Mahmoud is just one of those faces in that family. And I after his death, his brother Ahmed shared Mahmoud's Twitter, and I was reading his post, and he was so active, and you could tell what a lovely soul he had. And it's just devastating. The world lost such a beautiful, beautiful man with a truly kind heart. He wanted the best for Gaza and for Palestine. He wanted
taken part in actions like today. They are demonstrating, you are demonstrating the first basic principle of solidarity, that act of empathy that says to an oppressed person, to an oppressed people, we see you, we hear you, you do not stand alone, we stand with you. But solidarity demands more of us than an act of empathy. Active solidarity, what is required of us if we are to pass Munzer Ezek's basic moral test, is to take action to end our complicity, to end the complicity of our government, of our public bodies that continue to invest in the companies that sustain Israel's system of apartheid, and to take action to end the complicity of those companies themselves. Companies like Barclays Bank that continues to invest in the companies supplying Israel with its weapons of destruction. And on Friday, PSC will be launching an account closure day. We already have over 1,500 people signed up that day to close their account with Barclays Bank. But today, friends, we're outside the BBC. And the BBC has decades of complicity, decades of failure to fulfil its simple responsibility of accurate reporting and telling the truth. I did not think it was possible for the BBC to worsen its complicity, but what we have seen in the past few months has been deeply shameful.
He died in hospital despite the efforts of doctors after an Israeli missile strike in Rafah in Gaza. Rafah, of course, is in the south of Gaza, the place where 2 million people from Gaza were told to flee to because it would be safe. And Mohammed, at 2 months old, was killed in Rafah. Would anyone else like to come forward? Thank you, Louise.
This is Nazir Attar al-Nashash. He was 20 years old and a star footballer. He was killed with his father Attar and his uncle Nail by an Israeli missile targeting their home in Gaza. And you see a picture of him with his father. You see how proud and happy he looked. You can see the dreams in his eyes that were just cruelly stolen in a moment, like so many others in Palestine. All of these faces are just a fraction of the faces. Every single number in the tens of thousands killed had a story, had a face, had people who loved them, had people who grieved them, had dreams and a future, and it was just stolen in a moment. So it's remembering a few of those beautiful, beautiful lives that never should have gone away.
And told us that you have to stand up for the people and tell their stories and build up. Palestinians are not numbers. We are not numbers. I would like to introduce Ahmed Naouf to speak now.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you, my brothers and sisters and my colleagues, and now what I call you, my family in the UK. Thank you very much. When this genocide started in Gaza, my family were in their home sheltering. They thought that Deir al-Balah was a safe area because it's in the south of the Gaza Strip. But then Israel bombed my home. They killed my father. They killed my 2 brothers. They killed my 3 sisters. And they killed 14 of my nieces and nephews who are all children. They also killed my cousins and their families. But make no mistake, it's not only Israel that I blame here. It is also the Western media. I blame the Western media for the murder of my family and the British government. Just for you.
No, that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
British speech. Speech statistics. Carry on.
And I want to say that I did not lose my family. My family did not just die. I did not misplace my family. My family was killed. My family was murdered. My family was massacred while they were sleeping in their home. For that, I blame the Western media for providing a cover for the Israeli army over the past 75 years. Shame on them. Shame on the Western media that provided a cover for Israel to kill our people in Gaza for the past 75 years. Shame on them. When I first started being a journalist in Gaza, one of my mentors and teachers, he's called Rifat Al-Ar'ir, and he was one of my mentors, one of my mentors. And he always taught us that the purpose of journalism and media is to tell the stories of the victims, to tell the stories of the occupied, to tell the stories of the colonized, of the besieged, not to glorify the crimes of the occupation, of the killer, of the besieger. And unfortunately, the Western media in this country has been playing a role in providing a cover for the killers, in whitewashing their crimes against the victims, against the Palestinian victims. But rest assured, the Palestinian people are very powerful. They're very proud. They're very professional. And we have heard that over 120 Palestinian journalists were killed in this genocide. But their work, we will continue. Now in Gaza, there is 1 million citizen journalists who are covering what's going on in Gaza, who are covering the news fairly and impurely. I would like to end with a word of my mentor, Rifat al-Ar'ir, whom Israel killed in this war with his family. He said, if I die, let it bring hope. If I die, let it be a tale. Please, my colleagues, my journalists, let's keep the stories of the Palestinian people alive. Let's keep their life a tale that we will tell for all eternity for the younger generations. They will not die. The stories of the Palestinian children and citizens and women and journalists and doctors who were killed will stay alive forever in our hearts. Thank you very much.
This is Mohammed Imad Labat. He's a Palestinian journalist for Al Resala website. He was killed in an Israeli aerial bombardment of Sheikh Radwan in Gaza. I think this is a story that is so common, the targeting of journalists, the truth sayers in Gaza, and it's our responsibility to tell the stories that Muhammad was sacrificed his life for.
This is Iyad Abdulaziz. No one.
Since the 7th of October, when Israel's latest attack on the besieged area of Gaza started. So thank you everybody for coming out today. I wanted to also mention there's been other actions today in Portsmouth and all over the UK. So earlier on in the council, we had a workplace day of action. We got together with other workers in the council offices to talk about what we can do as workers to support the people of Palestine and to push for an immediate permanent ceasefire and freedom and justice for Palestinians. And I know the students also had an action today, so perhaps somebody can talk about that in a bit. But I think what we wanted to do was just to take a moment to see some of the people who've been.
This is Bessan Halassa. She was a 19-year-old and she was a third-year medical student. She was killed with her mother, her sister, her brother and her grandmother and all the other members of her family at their home in Gaza. This is Abdul Hadi Habib. Abdul was a Palestinian journalist from the Manara news agency. He was killed by an Israeli missile strike on his home near Zaytun in southern Gaza. They have faces, they have names.